Hello and good morning to everybody. Hope you're all having a large day so far. My name is Susan Lynn Perry, and I'm the host of the Mother Cub Show, where we talk about all things related to autism and this somewhat crazy world that we're all living in. Today's topic is all about autism and independence, which a lot of us used to think was a bit of an impossibility. That is, to think that our spectrum child would ever be able to lead an independent life, learn to make their own decisions, have happy and healthy relationships, drive a car, hold down a job, raise a family, all of those things. A lot of us were not given a whole lot of hope when we first received that diagnosis, and that's one of the big reasons why I do what I do, to share information and inspiration and to introduce you to others who can help keep moving you forward on this important quest for a healthy and happy life for your child. We are all so used to making all the decisions, I think, for our children. I mean, we're consumed with the daily struggles that might include dietary restrictions, supplementation, therapies, school issues, doctor's visits, you name it, and we're dealing with it, aren't we? So we're consumed with all of this stuff that we often forget, I think, how important it is to continually be thinking ahead about what types of life skills that we need to be teaching our kids at the same time as all this other stuff. But we also need to step back and allow our kids to be a little independent, too. And you know what? If given the room to grow, our kids can do amazing things. So around here at my household, we usually have a fairly similar routine most nights. That is, we go for an afternoon swim, and we come in and take a bath or a shower, then settle down for dinner, and then maybe we'll play some board games or cozy up on the couch and watch a movie. And about that time, just about when I finally sat down and put my feet up for the evening, about that time my son is usually beckoning me for a late night snack of some kind, a muffin or fruit or whatever. And usually I hop right up and get that snack for him without thinking a whole lot about it. But it occurred to me a few nights ago that there's really no reason why he can't go do that on his own. If he wants a snack, he can go get one. So he came in and he wanted to know, he was kind of demanding actually, "Where's my snack, Mom?" And I stayed right where I was at and I said, "Well, honey, I guess it's in the refrigerator. You're a big boy. If you want a snack, why don't you go and get one?" And he looks at me with a stunned look on his face and he says, "I'm not a good snack maker, Mom. You're the best at it." So my boy has already learned the art of flattery. Smart kid, huh? But this time I stuck to my guns and I stayed where I was and said, "No, if you want a snack, you go ahead and go get one." So without any more prompting, he went in, got a step stool, got a plate down from the upper cabinet, went to the refrigerator, and he got himself a snack. Then he walks in the living room and says, "I was wrong, Mom. I'm a good snack maker too, see?" And I literally had to prop myself up. I was laughing so hard, I almost fell over. He had a huge dinner plate piled high with about 8 muffins, a chocolate cupcake, 7 or 8 cookie bars, and enough Jell-O to feed an army of 10. So independence, I think we might have a good start on that one. But portion control, maybe not so much. So on today's show, we have autism relationship expert Brian R. King, who's going to share with us some ideas that we should focus on as we help our children grow up into independent adults. Now I want to get started with my buddy Brian King, a happily married adult on the autism spectrum who also shares that spectrum with his wife and 3 sons. He's committed his life to helping parents learn how to develop better relationships with their spectrum kids, but to do it with a real sense of purpose and a sense of humor as well. Brian, good morning and welcome back to the Mother Cub Show.
Good morning. I'm just so excited to continue our conversation.
Me too. I'm so glad you're here today. So I have to tell you, we have gained a lot of new listeners since you were on the show last. And so for those not familiar with you, can you explain briefly what you do and why you do it?
Well, you mentioned already, I'm on the spectrum, as are my 3 boys and my lovely wife. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. Mm-hmm. And autism was not on my radar until my oldest son, now 13, hit first grade and quickly became unglued as he was overwhelmed by the sensory, the processing, and the social demands of that environment. And it became a full-time job just helping him keep his head above water. And in the process of getting to understand him and his needs, I, like many adults these days, came upon the revelation that he was just like his dad. And then I had to go through my own searching and self-awareness education to figure out, what does this mean for me, that I have these similar challenges? And ultimately what it came down to is that regardless of what my challenges are, regardless of what the labels are, they do not define me. What does define me are my passions, my goals, and the outcomes I want. And all I needed to do was find the tools necessary to help me and my kids close the gap between where we're at and where we want to be. And that's something that I teach any parent. Because far too often, I know you encounter this too, Susan, far too often in life, we allow the label to define who our children are. And any label that defines you according to your limitations has effectively slammed the door on your future. And you cannot allow that for yourself as a parent or for your children. Because if you want them to have a fulfilling life, you can't say, you can have a fulfilling life, but you have to count all this other stuff out in the process. That math does not compute.
Right. Oh, that's an excellent point. Well, I have to ask you, so that was about 7 or 8 years ago?
Yeah, about that.
About so. And did you have, as you were figuring all these things out on your own, did you have somebody as a mentor for you? Or was it really all on your own?
I still have people as mentors. The idea of doing it on your own is a misnomer.
Yeah.
It's foolhardy. It does not exist.
Well, it's very dangerous, too, I think.
To think you're going to do it on your own is to think that somehow you must live in a vacuum, that you must not get feedback, you mustn't get new information or education from anyone else, that you have to be somewhere intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually on an island. Mm-hmm. And this is absurd because we live in a society filled with people who have expertise and gifts that we were not put on this earth with. We are not designed to know it all, have it all, and be it all. We're designed to rely upon each other. So this idea of independence is a farce. It's nothing anyone should aspire to. The thing we need to aspire to is interdependence. How do we effectively partner with and utilize each other so that we can all become great? So the more that people aspire to independence, the more they're aspiring to do without each other.
So we really need to redefine it, not as independence where you're doing it all on your own or you're going to fail, but interdependence where you're growing but learning how to learn from other people, interact with others, and that type of thing?
Oh, absolutely. Because one of the things that I find is that when people throw around the word independence, especially those that are working together to help accomplish it, like people in IEP meetings, 2 parents who have committed to spend their lives together but spend very little of that time on the same page, that's a source of frustration. Mm-hmm. And when you ask them to define what independence means, it's amazing how often they define it differently. And these are people that are supposed to be working as a team to help accomplish it. Well, if you define it differently, you're not trying to accomplish the same thing. And if you're trying to do it for a child and you haven't defined it the same way, you end up doing things differently, getting different feedback, and confusing the heck out of that kid.
Yeah. Well, I know when you and I chatted off the air the other day, it was really kind of one of those light bulb moments for me that, here I've been focusing a lot on independence because I was taught that at a very young age, and it's worked quite well for me. But it's something that can be really hard for parents to see for their children that are on the spectrum. And I think when you brought it to my attention that if you're really pushing for independence, you're telling that child that they have to figure out how to do things on their own or they're going to be a failure. And I think that was a huge thing that I really wanted to talk about with you on the air, because I think it might help a lot of other parents out there too. And that is, you don't want to teach them that they have to do it on their own. You do want them to learn and have the motivation to do things on their own, but also if they don't know the answer to something, that's okay. They can get help. And that's something that a lot of our kids, I think, have a problem with.
Right. That when you push independence too much, especially the feedback you get from people when you're not doing it. They say, did you try it? Did you try it first yourself? Before you ask me, did you try it 3 times? Did you try it? And it's always this, don't ask me for help. Go away. That's always the feedback.
That's so like a sense of failure right there.
Yeah, the measure of success becomes, you've only succeeded when you don't need me. You've only succeeded when you don't need other people. Therefore, asking for help becomes an indication of failure. And yet, that's the feedback you give kids. You confuse the heck out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you need to do it independently, but if you need some help, just ask me. Okay, so you want me to be successful. You're proud of me when I'm successful. You're proud of me when I don't need you, but you're also asking me to admit failure and come to you and ask for help.
Oh, gosh.
That's the confusing message we give kids.
I think this can probably seem like a bit of an overwhelming process for some parents, because especially those that have been, working tirelessly on their child's health and behavioral problems forever. So in order to kind of get people switching gears into thinking more long-term, what do you think the most important first step would be in teaching this kind of interdependence?
Interdependence is all about realizing, and this is my all-purpose rule for interdependence and partnership. That rule is, my strengths are the reasons you need me, and my challenges are the reasons I need you. And that's basically the law of complementarity. I'm not good at everything. That's why I need people in my life. You're not good at everything, and if you need the stuff I'm good at, you need me. So there's always that understanding that we need to be there to balance each other out.
So it really has to be a paradigm shift in the parent's head.
Absolutely.
Kind of like what you gave me the other day.
One thing I want to throw out here is when parents typically talk about wanting their child to be independent, what's underneath that is, I want the peace of mind to know my child will be okay when I'm no longer here. And what that ultimately means is, you don't want to teach your child to do without everyone. You want them to be able to rely upon people besides you.
Well, to learn who to rely on and who they can go ask for help.
But the thing to teach throughout that is partnership. Yeah. How do you solve problems in partnership with someone else? And one of the things you did, I loved your introduction story with your son and the snacks. Because in partnership, he said, I can't do this without you, Mom. You need to do the snacks for me. But you gave him some feedback that let him know you can do this. Mm-hmm. You are able to do that. You simply need to have that experience. So in partnership, you helped him consider options he hadn't considered before. You encouraged him and you supported him. That is not something he did independently. That's something he did in partnership with you. Because as we learn from other people and grow from them, it's because they are one step ahead of us or farther. And they've discovered options that we didn't know exist. Mm-hmm. So they show those to us and they support us along the way. And the reason why he came back with so many things on his plate is because once he experienced that competence, once he put the same thing on there, he wanted to repeat that experience. Look what I can do. I put this one thing on the plate. Oh, man, I want to feel that again. Oh, I want to put this other thing on the plate. So what you were seeing on that plate, Susan, was a celebration of what he had just realized about himself.
Absolutely. Well, that, and I thank the Lord every day that my son has learned sense of humor. He loves to make me laugh. I mean, he will do anything, and that was a big part of it too, I think, because he wanted to bring that in and proudly show it to me because he knew I was going to go, there's no way you can eat all of that right now. And we just had a great laugh, and it was such a neat experience.
And
so I think
that moment of celebrating his competence, his experience of competence.
Absolutely.
The partnership is all about having those moments of connectedness where we support each other in getting a little bit better, where we help each other grow.
Oh, that's wonderful. And we're back again talking to Brian R. King, a good friend of the Mother Cub Show and our autism relationship expert. Our topic today is all about autism and independence, but we're really kind of changing that up at Brian's advice here that it really needs to be more about interdependence. So, Brian, let's get into a little bit more detail. Right before the break, we were talking about really how important it is to focus on things like self-esteem and competence in our children, not by doing everything for them, but by giving them opportunities to figure things out on their own, knowing that you're going to be there to support them. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Am I on a good track here?
I just want to tweak one little thing about your language. It's
okay.
Figuring things out on their own. And again, we want to avoid the idea that we're doing something in a vacuum without feedback. I'm doing it on my own because I come across this with my own boys. I have my own stubborn moments myself, and with a lot of my clients where they say, I don't want your advice, I don't want your help, I want to do it on my own. When a person tells themselves that they don't require feedback in order to progress, they lock themselves out from the very thing they need to progress, which is information. We all need to go through life knowing how we're doing. What are the results of our efforts? And if someone insists on being locked inside their own head and not taking cues from their environment, from other people, from anything else, they don't know what's working and what's not working. They can never get that information because they don't allow themselves feedback. So when you're in partnership with someone else, feedback is part of that process. Feedback in terms of, hey, you're doing awesome, you're doing great, look at what you accomplished. And part of the thing that helped them accomplish that was your encouragement, your feedback to let them know how they were doing.
Right.
And if things aren't working, you need feedback to that too so you can adjust what you're doing.
Adjust and keep moving forward.
Right. Feedback is absolutely essential. So doing it on your own doesn't happen.
That's a lot like the RDI therapy. Is what you're doing based kind of on those types of principles, or are you familiar with the RDI?
I'm familiar with it very generally.
Okay.
But the bottom line is there's no mystery or no magic to anything like RDI or anything I do. It's a matter of sitting down and really understanding what makes a relationship effective. And when you understand those building blocks very concretely, instead of just saying, well, you just know what to do. I just do it because it makes sense or because it's common sense. You can't build a relationship so unconsciously. Mm-hmm. When you understand it and you can make it concrete and you can make it deliberate and more purposeful, then you can start doing those things intentionally with your child. Because you're facilitating the experience of an outcome.
Right.
Their own competence. What you want your child to experience is, I took a specific action. I had a specific outcome. Look at that. And I did it with the support of another person. I didn't do it in a vacuum. United we stand, divided we fall. If we don't learn how to do these things with each other, with being the key word.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I had breakfast this morning, I did it with a plate and with the utensil. I didn't eat with my hands, like some wild animal. I'm always doing it with something. I'm always using some kind of a tool. The feedback from other people and from my environment is a tool. Mm-hmm. We need those kind of things to help us move forward. So as much as possible, the parent needs to focus on how do I conspire with my child to help them reach their own greatness? How do I support them and teach them how to get feedback from me, their environment, and everybody else around them to give them what they need to keep them moving forward?
I think a lot of it is also thinking out loud, helping our children to kind of think out loud. In other words, why are we doing a certain thing, or why do we want to interact a certain way? What are we doing? To encourage them to ask questions.
Yes, what are we doing and what need is being met by it?
Because it might not be apparent to them a lot of times. A lot of things aren't.
Well, and the things that aren't apparent to them are the things that people believe are actually important. I haven't met anybody, not one person, who is motivated by the just unquenchable need to be appropriate. People say, oh, let me tell you how appropriate I was today. I'm so excited. I can't wait to tell you how appropriate I was today. Well, people do things because they want to be certain. They want some predictability. They want some excitement or some variety. They want to be significant. They want to contribute. So when they tell you about their successes in life, they say, oh, let me tell you what I did for somebody today, or let me tell you what somebody did for me. They talk about experience of significance and contribution. And yet what's the feedback they get? Well, that's inappropriate. You need to be more appropriate.
Right.
We're given these nonsensical directions and these expectations and these standards that are abstract and immeasurable. And they're not the things that life are built on. But when you get feedback about be appropriate, what you learn essentially is that you need to make me happy or you're not successful. You need to measure up to my standards or you won't be accepted by me. And at the end of the day,
a performance thing.
At the end of the day, their needs are completely ignored.
It's really a performance thing as opposed to understanding why they're doing a certain thing.
Right. What need is being met by it other than the whim of whoever is defining the term appropriate at that moment? Because ultimately, it's how do I concretely meet my own needs? How do I help meet the needs of others? And how do we meet each other's needs together? How do we have a relationship? You cannot have a relationship if one person's calling all the shots.
Right.
Whether it's a teacher, whether it's a parent. If one person has all the say, in all cases, you don't have a relationship, you have a dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are certain circumstances like safety where parents must take the lead. That's the one exception.
Sure.
I have a 9-year-old who still runs out in the street without looking both ways. And that's something where I need to be prepared to step up and take full control because safety is an issue. But in the other situations where he must learn how to problem solve, to find the outcome he wants, the steps he needs to take in order to accomplish it, and the steps he needs other people to help him take. Where does he need the support? Where does he need the feedback? Where does he need that partnership in order to move forward? And the more he and I have that experience together, have the experience, not me saying, you need to be more friendly. You need to go and make friends. Lecture doesn't teach. Experience does.
Mm-hmm.
So I actively facilitate those experiences with him, and then when he goes and starts to do it with other kids, it's only because he's experienced how it's done. He's experienced his competence. He is confident around those areas. He's done it enough where he understands the pattern. He's conscious of it, and he can duplicate it. And that kind of stuff is not learned in social skills groups.
Right.
It is learned in their everyday experience with the most important relationships in their life, starting with their parents. That's
well, do me a favor, Brian.
Every single day.
What is the best way we can enrich these relationships with our kids? Give my listeners an assignment, if you would, that they can go home and do with their child today. Just one thing.
One thing is you need to ask your children for help. Let them be in charge for once. Let them be a resource to you. Because parents are always the ones rescuing in and doing for. If your kids are really good at something, ask them to explain it to you. Let them teach you something. Make them an asset so they begin to learn that it's a two-way street. Again, their strengths are the reasons you need them. Your strengths are the reasons they need you. So give them a chance to be strong and competent in your life. Let them contribute to you, and you can do it back. And then begin creating that partnership of enriching and helping each other grow.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful nugget there. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
We are almost out of time here, but I want you to mention your book. You have a book coming out is it next month?
In October. It's my 4th book. The publishers are still tweaking the title, but it's along the lines of creating successful relationships with people on the autism spectrum. And the subtitle is Let's Relate, because it's all about what I've learned. In spite of being someone on the spectrum, I have learned the concrete tools to have very effective relationships, because it's about closing the gap between what you want and what you want to accomplish. And on my website, spectrummentor.com, I've set up an entire community for teachers, employers, people with all different developmental challenges to come together and support each other and create those partnerships, because unless we do it, we're not going to experience it. So I set up that place where we could all come together and create the kind of relationships we need to.
Okay, so that's spectrummentor.com, everybody. You need to go check it out because Brian is an amazing writer. He has written inspirational articles, blog posts that are so insightful. They're really, really wonderful. And I highly encourage you to go check out his website, spectrummentor.com. And Brian, unfortunately, my friend, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm sure we'll be doing this again.
I hope so. Best of luck with the book launch, too.
I appreciate it.